Today we're going to be talking about home inspections and how to get through the process with the least amount of headache possible. Home inspections are the most common point in the real estate transaction where things take a dive and fall apart. So we're going to be going over 4 things that you can do to have a very smooth experience and have everybody be on the same page so that you have the highest chance of making it to the closing table. So number 1, the first tip is make sure you attend your home inspection. This may sound obvious, but a lot of buyers don't attend their home inspections. You're paying a lot of money to the inspector, and you want to make sure you come loaded with all the questions under the sun that you ever want to ask them. You'll be in the house for usually 2 to 3 hours, and you want to make sure you're taking notes and highlighting whatever major issues that you have while you're at the house. Because once you get the report, which is going to be 50 to 80 pages long, you're not going to be sifting through and trying to figure out what was worrying you. Number 2 is make sure you take everything the home inspector says with a grain of salt. A home inspector's job is, number 1, to protect you as the buyer, and the way they do that is they often overinflate every issue that they may find to make sure that it's not worse than what they said it was. They do this because of liability purposes. If you do an inspection and he finds a water issue in the basement and he tells you it's going to cost $100 and ends up being a $10,000 repair, you may have grounds to go back against that inspector. So make sure that you make notes during the inspection so that you can ask your real estate professional or get quotes afterwards about, hey, what issues are going to be small and what issues do I really have to worry about? So take everything with a grain of salt. Number 3 is make sure you're negotiating on major issues only. This is probably the most common point where the buyer and the seller is not on the same page, because the buyer often makes an offer not taking account for the minor issues that may come up. So when you make your initial offer on a house, make sure you're accounting for maybe the trim in one of the rooms that needs to be done, some of the touch-up paint. There's all sorts of small things that may cost you a couple hundred or a couple $1,000s, and you need to account for that in your initial offer so that when you do your inspection and the big things come up, such as replacing a roof for $5,000, you're negotiating only on that major issue only, and it's much more likely you're going to be able to come to an agreement with the seller. So the last thing, number 4, is make sure that you negotiate for seller credit and not for seller repairs. This is going to be applicable to like 9 out of 10 situations. The seller rarely has any incentive to do work properly. I'm going to explain. Let's say you do an inspection and you find an issue with your drainage pipe in the basement, and you're not able to see that. Your inspector might bring a scope, they see an issue, you realize the pipe's got to be dug up. If you ask the seller to dig that pipe up, how are you going to know that they actually did the work properly? How are you going to know that when they dug the pipe up, there wasn't any other issues that should have been fixed at the same time? So make sure that you ask for money or seller credit back from the seller so that you can hire your own contractor who has your best interest at heart, in mind, whatever you want to call it. And sometimes you can make an exception to this if the seller is a builder and they're rehabbing a house and giving you a warranty. That's one reason where you may feel comfortable asking them to do the work, but in most cases, you need to ask for seller credit. And if you follow all 4 of these steps, you attend the inspection, you make sure you take everything your inspector says with a grain of salt, you make sure you negotiate on the major issues only, and then ask for seller credit, it's very likely that you're going to have a very smooth home inspection experience and you're going to make it to a settlement table on your dream home.